So welcome everybody to the latest in our advocacy tools and latest news series. This is our fourth webinar now, I think, on the Disability Royal Commission. And today we'll hear from a number of people talking to the Commission and the ways that you can do that. We've had a couple of technical issues in the lead up to today, but hopefully it will run smoothly from here on in. I'm going to start by acknowledging country. I'm zooming in today from the lands of the Darkinjung people up above the Hawkesbury, here right on the coast. And I'd like to pay my respects to the elders of the Darkinjung people, both past and present, and to those emerging as well. I'd like to extend my respect to any person from an Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander background who's present today, and also welcome everybody. May we continue to work towards a country where justice is valued. Today is also the International Day of People with Disability, which occurs every December the 3rd. And every year there's a different theme. The theme this year is Building Back Together, which is a great theme considering the year that we've had. And as we build back better, may that be towards a disability inclusive and a more accessible and a more sustainable post-COVID world. So our panelists today, and you'll see their faces again shortly, we have 4 different people who will be speaking about their experience in talking to the Disability Royal Commission. And yeah, the hope today is that that's a real encouragement to you all, because everybody's on a different journey and at different stages of the journey. But part of working towards a better society in a post-COVID world is the work that the Disability Royal Commission is able to do as it investigates the issues around abuse, neglect, exploitation and violence towards people with a disability right across the life stage of people and in every context and setting. As participants, you're not going to be visible to any other participants, and nobody's going to even know that you're here unless you're only identified if you use the chat function. And if you haven't had a chance to change your name, just be aware that your name will appear in the chat function, which is different from the Q&A function, which is at the bottom of your screen. We're going to ask that if you've got a question that you want to ask, can you click on that Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen? And we'll have some time to answer your questions at the end. We might not get to everybody's question, but any question that we don't answer today, I'll follow up with you via email or via phone, and we'll go from there. Just to be aware that there will be some mention, not in detail, of situations of abuse and discrimination. If you feel the need, just feel free to leave the webinar. Feel free to call Blue Knot Counselling, which is a special counselling service available to anybody who's even thinking about talking to the Disability Royal Commission, and you can contact them on 1800 421 468. This webinar, not what appears in the chat, but we will publish it on our website, so you can watch it again later, and you can share the link with others. Just at the end of the webinar, we will have a feedback form, and we'd love it if you could fill in that feedback form so we know how we can continue to improve and continue to encourage you. And we will also email you a link to that feedback form after the event. So just a little about family advocacy. My name is Troy Hester, and I work in the Disability Royal Commission advocacy role here at Family Advocacy. I help and support people to talk to the Disability Royal Commission. But family advocacy is much broader than that. Family advocacy works right across New South Wales. We're an independent disability advocacy organisation, and we work towards the recognition of people with a disability being valued members of society, and we do that largely by working with families who undertake advocacy with and on behalf of a family member with disability. Family advocacy was founded by families who are concerned about the rights and interests of their family member with disability, and we continue to be governed and staffed by families and allies. We do a number of different things. We provide advocacy advice and support, generally over the phone to people. We undertake systems advocacy and write to governments and departments and organisations about some of the systemic advocacy, and including writing submissions to the Disability Royal Commission. And currently we're supporting engagement with the Disability Royal Commission, and that's what my role is here. So today, we're going to hear from a number of different panelists as they share their experience of making a submission to the Disability Royal Commission, and then we'll answer the questions that you've sent via email or asked using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screens. And I'll also share some more information about the Disability Royal Commission if it looks like there's time for that. So without further ado, I'm going to invite in the panelists. So Ramel, can you start off by telling us a little bit about you and your family? Ramel, can I get you to put yourself off mute?
Hello everyone, thanks for including me in this very important work. About myself and my family, pretty much a standard looking family, I guess. 2 kids, mum and dad. The disabilities we deal with are invisible. It is ADHD. I'm fortunate enough to be a stay-at-home mum that reads a lot and probably spends a little bit too much time on online groups and forums.
Okay. Tell us, Ramel, why did you make a submission to the Disability Royal Commission?
I was actually concerned that the Commission would miss hearing from people with ADHD. I know in the community there is perception that perhaps the voice isn't valid. It's not a valid disability. It is in fact. But I wanted to take the opportunity to make sure ADHD or people with ADHD, particularly families with young children, are represented. I also knew that my experience mirrored that of so many other people I've encountered in help group and online forums. So in case they couldn't tell their stories, I wanted to try to tell ours.
And what was your experience of making a submission? What was it like for you?
Well, there's 2 parts to it. The process or the technology aspect or logistics, if you like, I found quite easy to navigate. The other part of the experience was actually collecting my thoughts and trying to understand what was expected of me, what kind of story to tell. So just knowing the kind of story or the kind of evidence that I should be putting across. So I struggled a little bit in trying to work out whether, it should be something long or short. And I found it a little bit challenging at first to frame my experience in the Commission's term of reference, because what we went through, I wouldn't necessarily call it as abuse or willful abuse. It was more like, death by 1,000 cuts. So I wasn't sure whether that was a legitimate story to tell.
And you made one or more than one submission?
I made 2 submissions. That's not to say I don't have more to tell. The first submission was to do with my personal experience in a very, I suppose, small point in time to do with sort of care and transition of my child, to do with early health, suppose, care and early childhood care.
Yep.
The second one was more around my observation of the general, I suppose, stigma and discrimination that I witness happening across institutions and in community towards people with ADHD.
And what kind of submission did you make? Were they both written or a verbal one, or did you talk to the commission?
Yes. So I'm terrified of, missing crucial information when I'm talking to people, as I am now. So I've got my notes. Hence, I actually chose to write things down. So my submission was in the form of a one-page. The second one was a two-page Word document. It was accompanied by the template, but I didn't use the template to tell a story. I actually found the template did not represent, I suppose, the experience, and probably likely experience of others like me. So I just chose to, and in fact, after looking at the very first live, uh, what do you call it, live?
Public hearing?
Yes, public hearing. It was to do with education. I noticed that the very brave witnesses actually told a story about, what happened in their life and what happened, during certain moments. So I decided to, make it a much more concise version of that, and tell my story in a similar way, covering a particular point in time.
Mm-hmm.
And in telling that story, after much sort of thought, I kind of chunked it down into 3 points. The first was the instances that I suppose flagged to me that perhaps, discrimination or unfairness was taking place.
Yep.
The second part of that was the real repercussions of that, the long-lasting effects, I guess, of what that did. I won't go into the details, of course. Yes. And the third part was what could have been done differently to avoid that situation.
Yep.
Because I felt that it's something that is, with a bit of, I guess, political will and a little bit of funding would be quite simple to fix. So breaking it down,
Yeah,
story, but, with 3 parts to it.
that's great. What did you find hardest about making a submission?
Collecting my thoughts. And I wish I did have someone to sort of bounce ideas off and perhaps guide me. As I started writing, I realized it was actually quite an emotional task to look back into a difficult period in our lives. So that was difficult. I wish I not so much had help with that, but I wish I had more of a reassurance of the legitimacy of that, thought, that it wasn't sort of, too over the top, too emotional, that it was actually valid, and that, the perspective of someone, caring for a child with an invisible disability, and one that's often, is being told is not a legitimate one, that's actually a valid voice and a valid story, when you contrast it with such, tales of, horrific abuse that we do hear actually happen to other people with disabilities. So it's sort of like reconciling the legitimacy of that was difficult at first. Once I got into it, it was easy from that point.
Okay. What helped you get through that difficulty?
So listening to the live hearings, that helped. And also, just realizing that I'm, telling a story, in the same way. So just hearing voices of other people who are other, parents like me with, younger children and their experiences, perhaps some similar experience, just gave me confidence that what I had to say was, was valid.
No, thank you for that. And obviously you telling your story today encourages others as well. What would you say to others who are thinking about putting in a submission to the Disability Royal Commission?
Well, I'd say please do it. Please do it. I can't urge you strongly enough. It is crucial, especially for communities of people with invisible disabilities, ADHD, dyslexia, etc. It's very important for our voice to be heard and for us to be included in any recommendations that will ultimately affect outcomes for if not our generation, then those to come. It's crucial. Your story matters, your voice matters, and only your story can create that understanding for the Disability Royal Commission to then, take into account and make recommendations based on that. If we don't speak, they won't know that, we're actually suffering, and then there are things that can be done to improve the situation. I also want to tell people to try not to get hung up on their, writing skills or their grammar and spelling. The most important thing is their story, their situation. So don't let that hold you back. And to that point, I also know that people with ADHD or in the ADHD community have, I suppose, very specific barriers to sitting down and facing an emotionally daunting task, I suppose, of, thinking, back into their past, systemically going through, putting it down on paper, going through the whole submission process. The kind of things that make it difficult for you to, know where to start and actually see the process through. So I want to alert you to the fact that there are buddies that are available through Thriving with ADHD and Parents for ADHD Advocacy Australia. So a buddy that can, sit with you through the process, not physically, but maybe online, or at least, prompt you along the way, just check in with you to make sure that, you're okay and that you are seeing through that process. It's a very specific sort of barrier to people with ADHD. It is important that your stories are heard. So please tell them, and please, make use of that service if you need it.
Thanks, Ramel. Thanks for your time, and thanks for being honest and really sharing your story. I'm sure it's encouraging to others.
Thank you for running this. It's very important. Thank you.
I'm going to hand over to Sean now. Hi, Sean. How are you?
Yeah. Hi, Troy. I'm great. Thanks. And thanks for inviting me along.
Can you tell us a bit about you and maybe your family things?
Yeah, I'm a father in a family of four. A teenage daughter and a son who's 11, who's going to go into high school in 2022. And my dream is for him to have an inclusive education experience.
So, Sean, tell us, why did you make a submission to the Disability Royal Commission?
Yeah, I made one because being a Royal Commission, it's the highest form of inquiry in Australia. And this is a historical opportunity. There's not going to be a better opportunity than right now to have our voice heard. So that's why I think it's primary. If there's ever going to be a time to talk and speak out and advocate, now's the time. And I was really, and personally, I'm obsessed with inclusive education, to be honest. And I'm really keen to share our family experiences and the experiences of my son, with a view to informing the Royal Commission, given that there's a lot of interest groups, special education organisations, special education principal organisations putting submissions in, and I wanted to make sure they have a viewpoint from people with lived experience.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
And what was it like for you? What was your experience of making a submission?
The process of making a submission, I found the easy part. I prepared a written submission, and I just emailed it through and got a receipt. So that was the process I did. The most effort was, or the biggest effort is obviously preparing that report and all the work that you have to put into to do that. Yeah.
What kind of submission did you make? Did you make just one, or?
I've made a number. So I've made. There's been previous inquiries, Senate inquiries, and in previous years. So I actually just rehashed one of those I've done already and submitted that as one submission. So that was an easy submission to make. And then the second one, I prepared a submission on our experiences trying to find an inclusive education experience. Yeah.
What did you find hardest about getting a submission in?
Yeah, the hardest thing is to get that submission together and to work out what you want to achieve with that submission, and just getting all that information together in that report and in that submission.
How did you do it? How did you overcome that?
Yeah, well, I guess I began with the end in mind. I just tried to work out what I wanted to achieve and what I wanted to get across to the Royal Commission. And then I just broke down the tasks into small pieces. And then week by week, I'd set a little bit of time aside and then just do it bit by bit over the weeks, because like everyone, with special needs parents, we're all pretty time poor often, and it can be very challenging to set aside time to do it. So I've just done it bit by bit. And the submission I've made isn't a complete submission because it's an ongoing quest. So I think the other thing I realised is just to get what I could out and submit it, and flagging what's incomplete, and I can send other submissions in down the track as I get more information.
Great. Having done what you've done, what would you say to other people who are thinking about putting in a submission to the Disability Royal Commission? I think it's your best opportunity you're ever going to get to get your voice heard, and to share your experiences, and to make a real difference, hopefully, for our loved ones and for ourselves. Yeah. Thanks for sharing, Sean.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it.
No problem.
Okay, we're going to now test our technology, and I'm going to share a recording that was made earlier with someone called Alyssa. So, no, I'll just make sure I've got this going. And let me know. Here we go. So, are you ready to start?
I think so.
Okay,
I'm not sure if anyone's ever ready to start anything. Okay. Hi, my name is Alyssa. I'm a single parent, and 3 out of 4 of my children have disabilities. They range from ages 6 to 10.
Thanks, Alyssa. So tell us, why did you make a submission to the Disability Royal Commission?
I put in a submission because of the deep embedded systematic discrimination that we have faced with multiple state government departments, and also to highlight what is achievable when children like mine are seen as a person first instead of a label.
And what kind of submission did you make?
I'm doing my family submission through a private submission, which I found to be the best option for my family's experience, purely due to privacy reasons, as the submission was in regards to government departments, and I also had a fear of being judged.
And what was the topic of your submission?
My family's story highlighted segregation, discrimination, and neglect, amongst other things. But they were the 3 main points.
What did you find hardest about making a submission?
I would say the hardest part for me was going through all the paperwork and feeling like I was reliving it. There were tears, anger, contempt, sadness, but also happiness, achievement, strength, and courage because of how far we have come. I was able to see my resilience and how many hurdles, not just myself, but also my children have overcome throughout the years.
So how did you get past the hard things? What's helped you to overcome this?
I'm yet to overcome it. The countless challenges that my family have endured. However, I am okay because I know that we're not having to endure a lot of those things in our current situation.
So when you put together the submission, did you use a template or a set of questions that you found helpful? And what did you do?
I put together a roadmap and picked out the parts I felt highlighted the biggest challenges that we have overcome. At first, I didn't know where to begin. I felt like I was walking through a bed of nails or something. So I got out all the paperwork, I put it all together, and then I started reading through it, and I started dot pointing the dates of the diagnoses, the paediatrician appointments, the dates of the early intervention, transition to a new school, and then I took out what situations I felt highlighted inequity, discrimination, and also neglect in them, and I narrowed down that list to pinpoint my talking points.
And what would you say to other people who are thinking about sharing their experience with the Disability Royal Commission?
I would tell them that I know it's scary, overwhelming, and also emotionally exhausting to have to speak of situations that injustices have occurred. But by sharing your stories, we will get change for not just our children, but children that are still yet to be born and yet to see the world. Also, our lives as carers can feel socially isolating, so it is so important to reach out for support through this process, whether that's through Blue Knot Counselling or it's through friends or family.
Well, thanks, Alyssa, for sharing your experience today. I'm sure it's helped others who might be feeling the same way. Thank you.
No worries, you're more than welcome.
Okay. Great. I'm going to turn now to the fourth of our panelists today, Brianna. Hi, Brianna. How are you?
Hi, good. How are you?
That's good to hear. Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Yes. So same kinds of questions. Start off by telling us a bit about you and your family.
I'm the sole parent of 2 children with disability.
Okay. And why did you make a submission to the Disability Royal Commission?
I realised that my children, as a result of their disability, were constantly being exposed or subject to inequalities, stigma, negative assumptions, and the kind of, I guess, I call them small acts, small daily acts of abuse and neglect and so on that we see within our systems. And I felt that I needed to speak up because if we don't say something, people don't hear anything. So it was really important to put on record that these things are happening.
Definitely. What was it like for you? What was your experience of making the submission?
I found the experience was actually a very positive one for me. It was very emotional, quite cathartic. The reason that I think it was a positive one was because it's the first time that I feel like our experience has been really listened to. And I found that quite validating. I'm hearing the stories of Ramel, Alyssa and Sean, and that sort of legitimacy that comes with putting forward your story to someone who actually is there to listen. And the whole point is that upon listening, action is supposed to be taken, and to be part of that process I found was really affirming. And I felt like it was, I guess, a process in which we're aiming to bring about positive change. So that in itself was something that I was wanting to be part of and found positive.
So what kind of submission did you make?
I requested a private session with the Commissioner. So this happens in 2 parts. There is a pre-hearing hearing, which I have recently done, and that pre-hearing session is done with, I'm going to use the word assistant. I'm pretty certain it's not an assistant, but someone else other than the Commissioner. Basically, you do like a trial run of what your testimony is going to be. So there's a Q&A process of that. You put forward your story. They may have follow-up questions, and then they go away, present that to the Commissioner, probably so they have a bit of a chance, I'm told, to get their head around what they're expected to hear. And then the second part of that is that the actual private session with the Commissioner themselves, which has yet to be booked.
Yet to be booked, or yet to come? Yep, okay. Just making very clear, that's private. That's not, you're not speaking to lots of people.
No, no, that's the private session with the Commissioner.
Okay. What was the topic of your submission?
Primarily the education sector.
Right.
Difficulties accessing the kind of continuity and quality and supports and resources that my children need. There was also some testimony given accessing health services and also a little bit on the NDIS and accessing supports through that.
Right. Okay. So I covered a few different areas.
Yeah, went for around about an hour and a half, which was longer than I expected.
What was the hardest thing about making a submission?
I have 2 children. They are not little anymore. So when you look at the years of experiences that we've had, there's so many, trying to figure out which ones best exemplify what we've been through, trying to find which ones best tell the story, telling it succinctly, telling it in a way that conveys the scope and the extent of the incidences and processes they've been subject to, and also telling those stories in a way that conveys the impact this has had on them, the impact it's had on us as a family unit, the impact that has on their futures, and the impact that has on the larger society in general. So trying to nut all that down to a simple, direct, easy to understand process, bearing in mind that the people who are listening may not necessarily have the same lived experience of disability that I have and that my children have. So how do I basically interpret their experience for someone who may not have already had that direct understanding?
Yeah, all very important. What would you say to others who are thinking about putting in something or saying something or wondering whether they should?
I would say that don't think that because you're not carrying physical scars or bruises that your story is not a legitimate one of abuse or neglect or exploitation. I think that one of the things that I have found most positive and useful about this process, and I've heard it from Rimmel outlined it very well, that understanding that the small acts of neglect, the small acts of abuse, the denial of access, the denial of opportunity, the low expectation, the denial of stimulation and challenge and all that kind of thing that we see as being crucial to living equal lives. These are acts of neglect, these are acts of abuse, and these things need to be addressed. So just because you don't think your experience would result in criminal charges because it's a huge issue or a huge headlining event doesn't mean you shouldn't get in contact with the Royal Commission and tell them your story. If we don't call out the problems with systemic issues, the problems with systemic attitudes, the problems that we have across the board in changing the perception and culture around disability, then we'll never change the way society includes and represents us, or the way we can represent ourselves within society. So put your story out there, no matter how big or how small your experience, no matter how continued, keep telling those stories, put them on the record. So we need to tell people, we need to tell the world these things matter, these are important, we have an issue with these things and they need to be changed. And as I'm sure everyone else who's made a submission has suggested, and then put forward those solutions. This is what we need to do. This thing here just needs to change. This is how you can change it. The solutions are actually quite simple. It's just getting that support systemically and politically and I guess society-wide support behind those solutions that will make the difference. But until we speak out, tell our stories and offer those answers, I don't think anything will change.
Thanks for sharing, Brianna. It's really good to hear from you.
Thank you for having me.
So today we've just heard from 4 different people. You can't tell from where they sit that they come from different parts of New South Wales. They each have a different experience and a different voice. And that's really what is important in going to the Disability Royal Commission. The Disability Royal Commission has said, we need to hear from you. We need to hear your voices. And it's the incredible thing about a Royal Commission, even though it's at the very highest level in terms of being able to investigate, it hears from everybody. And what you say to the Commission guides the work of the commission. So if they hear, multiple stories from one different area, that gives them a chance to focus on that area. If they don't hear any stories from another area, then they don't have anything to guide them in what's going on. And wherever you are able to, nobody else can replicate your experience. And one of the things Brianna said was just to talk about, help somebody who doesn't have your experience to know something of what that experience is, what that impact of that is. These are really important messages to give to the Disability Royal Commission. And yeah, and that's what they're asking for. The other thing is too, the commission is looking for things that work. If you know what's going to work, if you know, this happened and that made such a difference, the way that this person acted, that attitude, that system made such a difference, you've got a unique perspective. You can say from experience what's working and what could work in a way that nobody else can. So I would echo what these 4 people have said. There are many other people out there who've got similar experiences and different experiences. And yeah, the goal was just to encourage people. We are going to go to some questions shortly. We've got plenty of time for questions, so that's good. I just wanted to quickly highlight 1 or 2 things. Bear with me as I just share a couple more things with you. These are links that you probably know and probably are already aware of. The Disability Royal Commission can be reached by phone on this number, this website. If you want legal advice about anything you share, Your Story Disability Legal Support is there purely for this Royal Commission and your legal questions. They will give you any legal advice you need around speaking to the Disability Royal Commission, including where maybe you're worried about naming names, or what you can say, what you shouldn't say. Maybe you have an agreement that you've signed that you want to know about the legal ramifications about speaking to the Royal Commission. They are the people to talk to. I always refer people to them for anything legal. Blue Knot Counselling. It is a difficult thing to go through people's experiences, and even the thought of raising it or going through it, and some people talk about reliving it by having to get it down on paper. Talk to Blue Knot Counselling. They are there. It's a free service available to people. And then there are advocacy supports. A number of people today spoke about how helpful it is to have someone to talk to, whether that's reading a submission through with your partner, whether it's talking to a friend, maybe it's a group of friends together who've got similar experiences, a buddy, and there's advocacy support as well. And I'm here at Family Advocacy, and I'm here to support people to talk to the Royal Commission. So you can get in touch with us there and at that website there. So yeah, don't feel like you have to do it alone. There are other links, but I might see if I'm going to get Karen, who works here in Family Advocacy with me, and she is going to ask some of the questions that you have. If you've got any questions, then please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen, and you can ask a question there. Karen.
Okay, great. Well, first off, bravo. Well done, families. Sean, Ramel, Brianna and Alyssa. That was terrific. I think really, really helpful for people. And I know it's brave to talk with people and to come up and say that and share. So thank you. Thank you very much. So we have got a couple of questions, came through email as well as through the Q&A. So I'll kick off. One person, a couple of people actually said that they did their submission in a real hurry and actually want to put a lot of other information down and want to resubmit it. So can you, and it might be a question we have to take on notice, Troy, but can we resubmit a submission and actually override the original one so that it's a improved version, if you like, with more info?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure, I don't think you can override a submission. but you can put in more than one submission. We've heard from a couple of people today who've put in more than one submission, and depending on how you do it, if you're using your name, or if you use a pseudonym, if you don't want to use your name, you can use a pseudonym like Flowery Bandicoot 21, and that means that if you put in a submission under Flowery Bandicoot 21 and you want to put in another submission which is somehow linked to it, you can use that pseudonym. Otherwise, the details that you put in with your submission should allow your submissions to be linked. And you can put in more than one submission. Like you might put in one about education, one about the health system, one about what happened at Christmas when we went to the shopping centre. It can be, you can take a very small slice, or you can be talking about something that's quite large, and they're related, of course.
Okay, good. But certainly it's a big theme to say put in more than one, and don't worry that you've missed some stuff out. You put it back in and all that information will go, that will get to them, right? So
that's right. Every submission is going to be read, and if you've got one in and it's a rushed one, then congratulations, you've gone through the process. You know what the process is. You've already made that start, and you can go and you can put in a fuller submission, and it will enhance the first submission. Neither submission will be wasted.
Absolutely. Getting started, I think, was a common theme amongst all three or four of you, actually, was that getting started beat. And I think you all tried to give your way of how you did make that happen. So so I think even doing a quick rushed one and getting it off there is maybe a great weight off. Would you agree that you then are ready to explore again and do another one? You can nod or shake your head. you agree, great. So on the lines of that then, Troy, there is also a question, we get this one a lot actually, is some people think that the date's already passed, it's already too late to put in a submission. I think the learning issues papers sometimes, you know, there's dates on those. It does make people feel confused as to is that perhaps the ship sailed, if you like. So Troy, maybe just to follow up with, how can people still put it in? Is there a date to finish? And where's best to make contact?
Again, this is a question I get a lot, and I say to people, there's two ends of this. One is if you get it in early, then the commission can use it right from the time that you get it in. So to have something in early means the commission is able to include that in their thinking, in working out what to investigate, etc. And so there's an advantage. There is an advantage in getting things in earlier, but there's no set time to have got an issue in on education. So actually next week the public hearing is on people with disabilities experience in employment, leaving school, finding work, etc., and things like that. It is too late to put in a submission that will be considered so that you'll be called upon. Not everybody, the commission decides who speaks at a public hearing. If you put in a submission this week, you're not going to be called upon to speak at next week's public hearing. But that doesn't mean that after next week, when that's finished, that the commission stopped thinking about employment. It's going to continue. So anytime, all of next year, and if the commission is extended beyond that, you can get your submission in.
Yeah, as someone in the chat has just mentioned that they tried and there was a message to something like the date had closed, or the state of submissions had closed. But I think, Troy, it is exactly what you're saying. It's a little bit confusing that, you know, if there was a public hearing, that might mean that it's closed for the submissions to be part of that, but they will still accept submissions on the topic right through till the end of the process, which is 2022?
At this stage.
At this stage?
Yes.
It might increase based on this year being an interesting year. So it might increase that date, but that is a request, not something that's happening yet.
The commission has asked for more time because it is such a broad thing. I know that at the moment, the commission is planning and putting together the public hearing for February next year, which is on people with cognitive disabilities experience of the justice system, which is going to be a huge topic. That's in planning stages. Again, the justice system is going to be something that continues to be on the radar of the commission right throughout their time.
And you mentioned the public hearing. So I did have a question that sort of ties into actually making a verbal appearance at a public hearing. So someone asked, particularly if they were called on to present their submission in person, would they have a chance to have vocal tics? Would they have a chance to be able to have them removed or included as they wish into the transcript? Is that something you can understand how individual that process might be able to be?
So when it comes to a public hearing, the Disability Royal Commission decides what they want to investigate, and they will choose which witnesses they call upon to share in a public hearing. If you have an interest in and a willingness to speak, to present your evidence, to present your submission in a public hearing as a witness, you can make note of that in your submission, but it's up to the Commission whether they then decide to contact you and ask you about what you would share and what you could share. And when you look at Family Advocacy, Cecile from Family Advocacy was one of the panelists at one of the previous public hearings. There was a large submission that went in behind that, with an acknowledgement that she was willing to be called upon as a witness, and they asked just a few questions from everything that had gone in. So it's not something that from the outside we control, because we control our story and getting the submission in, and what happens publicly in a public hearing is very much the Commission honing in on a particular issue.
So I guess for this particular person asking the question, and any others that might have a similar question as well, if you are asked by the Commission to be in a public hearing, then that's when you start asking the questions about how that's going to work and what opportunity you have to have things removed or included, as this particular question asked. That's really,
can I just jump in here and just add to that? So there is a legal service that I think Troy referred to at the beginning called Your Story, and they give free legal advice to anyone who is making a submission at any point in making the submission, before you've done it, during, and so on. So if you were to make a public submission, like if you were happy to give evidence in a public hearing, I think it would be really wise to touch base with them first and run through what you're planning to say, just so you can be comfortable that legally you're basically, doing the right thing and saying the right words and so on.
I also add something to do with, I suppose, privacy and publicity. Apart from actually speaking at a hearing, you can stipulate to the Commission your comfort level in regards to, privacy around your submission. So from memory, you can agree for it to be available on their website, with your name attached to it, or to the other extent, you can just request for the Commission just to view the evidence, but not publicize it anywhere. So there are various levels in between as well. So apart from just speaking, at the live hearings, the way you make a submission as well, you, I believe, have some control over how far your personal information is, relayed out there.
Yeah, they're both very pertinent comments. With Your Story, there is actually a webinar on our website where we asked some questions of Your Story, and they are definitely the people to talk to about any legal questions. And I often refer, if you're interested in if you've got a written submission and you'd like Your Story to read over it and give you a legal view on what it is and what you've said, then they're able to do that as well. They're also able to refer you to other legal services if you have some legal issues that are going on aside from what's happening with the Disability Royal Commission, and they will also make referrals for matters that aren't exactly on the Disability Royal Commission or outside of the scope of the Disability Royal Commission. I might just share, I've got just quickly here. So just in terms of finding things on the website, so this is obviously the Disability Royal Commission's website. If you wish to share your story, the links. Oh, by the way, so the fast facts, currently they've received 1,700 submissions. I reckon we should be able to double that before the end of the year if we try really hard. To share a submission, the links are share your story. You can make a submission here, or you can apply for a private session. That's what Brianna was talking about. Making a submission will take you to a form. There's an infographic. Make your submission here. Sorry if that's too small for people. There are resources available. This is your story here. And this is a resource they have talking about protecting your story when you share it with the Disability Royal Commission. And they've got information here. If you need any of these documents, you can email me and I can forward them to you. They've got one on can I names. And there's another reference document here about sharing your story in a private session. In terms of family advocacy, some of these resources you can find through our Royal Commission space here. These are some of the resources. That's the website. If you want to look at our videos, go to our YouTube page. I'm just going to do this really quickly. Go to videos, and you can. This is where our webinar will be posted, and you can see some of the previous webinars here. Sorry, that was very quick, but if you have any questions about any of those, feel free to get in touch with me.
I think we'll send in a follow-up email some key links as well, because someone actually did ask a question about links to different templates and processes and mapping tools and things like that that people may have used to refine the submissions that you've put in and to help people get started. And that's something we've actually thought about doing. So we might see what we can bring together to share to people and maybe draw from the 4 of you that have spoken today as well. That's
yeah. That's very true. And just to jump across here, this is the template that the Royal Commission comes up on the Royal Commission page. And essentially it's what happened, something about the reporting. When you say what happened, also talk about the impact on you and your family. Reporting, what happened when you reported it. Oops, hold on. What was the response to your reporting, and what recommendations do you have for change and anything else? That's one template, but you heard from the different people today that there are many other ways of doing it, just honing in on something. I know Alyssa started opening the box and pulling out the different bits of correspondence that she had to try and get a time frame around things. Just to emphasize, I'm just going to go back here. Oops, so that's not helping me. The terms of reference for the Disability Royal Commission, any setting, any context, including schools, community settings, group homes. They also look at the NDIS and the NDIS Quality and Safeguard framework, and they specifically also look at the experiences of people who have lots of different things going on. So it might just not be because of your disability, it might be because of your disability and your gender, or the fact that you come from a different ethnic background. Any of the things that make things more complicated. The public hearing that we just had looked at specifically at the experience of peoples of First Nations with the child protection system. And so there was a lot of stories that came out there as well.
Troy, a couple of other quick questions. You mentioned when you were talking about the public hearing and Cecile being part of it, that there was a statement. So someone's saying, does that mean our submissions actually have to be take a form of a statement? No.
They can appear in any format. So it doesn't have. I think it was Ramel who said that the template actually didn't work for her, and she just chose to tell her story.
Mine's not a statement. Mine's just a conversation.
Yeah.
So they basically, as part of the process of even leading up to the pre-hearing hearing, they asked me just to type out what I'll be talking about and 1 or 2 examples, which I sent in an email, so that when the pre-hearing hearing happened, they just launched into questions. It was all more like a Q&A than an actual statement.
Thanks, Brianna. And I know that they even say that, so for some people who have trouble with writing, you can record something on your computer. There are numerous voice apps, etc., or you could use Zoom. I've actually suggested to a couple of people, write out the questions to yourself and then answer your questions on Zoom or on an audio, and then you can listen back and re-record it as many times as you'd like until you're happy with it. You don't have to do it in a written form. The Commission's actually said, if you want to do a painting or a drawing, I know some people who are thinking about doing a rap as well. So whatever format works for you.
Very accessible, basically, which is what we need from that Commission, and for people with disability into the future. There's just one other question. I don't know if anyone here has done this, but that's just asking if anyone has actually taken legal action in addition to putting a submission in.
I think that's a question for your story, because then you go to your story and you say, I want to take a legal action as well, and they can refer you to some legal support around that.
Okay. All right, so I think we've covered our Q&A questions. If anyone has anything really quickly, type it up now. And we'll,
Yeah, I really appreciate the questions and really appreciate the people who've spoken today. Everybody who I know that the 4 people who spoke today were all parents as well as and it's that's just a lot who we collected for today. The Commission is very much focused on people with disability. My role at Family Advocacy, I support both people with a disability and their family members as well. And in terms of the Disability Royal Commission, it doesn't matter if you don't even need to have a family member with a disability. If you know what's happening, if you see what's happening, if you're a worker in a group home, if you can see what happens on the street, the Royal Commission is interested in hearing what's happening and what works and what doesn't work and what needs to change. And so that's it's there for anybody who has something to say to the Disability Royal Commission. And it doesn't need to be, somebody doesn't need to die before something can be said. It is the small acts, it is the attitudes. It's not easy to talk to the Royal Commission. We've heard that today. It can be emotionally difficult, it can be physically difficult, but it can also be positive as well. And a couple of people spoke about how it can be cathartic. And it gives you a chance to reach out and connect with other friends and family and people around you as well. And do reach out for support.
Yeah, we did actually have a question about the average wait time on booking an appointment with you, Troy.
It varies, but always happy to hear from people.
There's definitely capacity to contact Troy and then might make a time with you, as he works part-time, but there's no wait time like some service might have with weeks of waiting time. There's nothing like that, so please get in contact. And there was just another question too, just quickly. I know it's now at 1:30, but I think it's a good one in terms of is there any examples of people getting involved in making submissions and sharing their stories with others? And also how people may have got started. Was it because you're already linked to family advocacy that got you started, or is there other sort of community networks that maybe helped you to get that started and get thinking about doing your submission?
There are other groups, various groups and organisations out there. I think Ramel mentioned a couple of options out there. And maybe, I think we've actually put it into our survey question. We're asking if people are interested in having a group call like this, just with people who are interested in bouncing some ideas around to encourage each other. So if that's of interest to you, then yeah, and if you wanted to yeah, I know that I think each of the people who spoke today are involved in different groups for support. Just conscious of time, but otherwise I would...
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you everyone for being part of this, and feel free to watch it again. Feel free to share the link, and let's keep talking and supporting each other. It's really valuable work. Thank you.